All right, let's get started. One of my favorite authors is a guy I talk about regularly called Dr. Henry Cloud. So if you've never read, if you are like, well, I'm only going to read one book this next year, pick up a book by him and you will not be disappointed. This is one of my favorite books of his, Changes That Heal. In the book, he said this in the opening section. He said every week, by the way, he's a Christian counselor. He runs his own hospital and clinic. He said, every week I see Christians who are suffering from a whole range of emotional problems. Anxiety, loneliness, grief, resentment, feelings of inadequacy. And he said, the church is unclear on how to deal with these hurting people. He said, people who are hurting like this and go into a church, he said, here's usually what they get. He said, people who struggle emotionally are you're in sin, or you don't have enough faith, or you're not being obedient, or you're not spending enough time in prayer or the word. So in other words, a person's emotionally broken, and they go into a church, and the church blames the hurting person. He said, of course, simple answers like that don't relieve their pain, so this leads to one of two outcomes for people. They go into church, they're in pain, they express their pain, and they're judged for their pain. So they do one of two things. He said, first, they become fake Christians who simply hide from all of this. So they walk into a service and they're like, hi, praise the Lord, everything's good in my life. A lot of fake Christians in the world. Or the other things, they just stop going, and that is happening in massive amounts in America. So these are two outcomes, and I read that and I thought, is this really how it's supposed to be? You think this is the picture of the church that God had in mind when he started the church, as a place where we come in and we're fake, or we just don't come in at all? This is not at all what he intended. Matter of fact, we know what he intended because he told us God knew his people in advance, and he chose them to become, those last four words, become like his son. You want to know what God's purpose is for your life? He wants to put you on a path that will make you more like Jesus. So what will that be like? It'll be like this. You will become more loving. And you will become more patient. And you'll become more self-controlled and more kind and more full of joy. And if the world saw this, here's what people would be saying in our communities. They'd be saying, oh my goodness, I really want to try that church out because, man, I have this friend that's going there and I can see so many positive changes happening in their life. I want to go there. Said no one ever. I literally was talking to a coworker just recently. They knew my background, knew that I've been a pastor for all these years, and they said, I don't go to church, I have no interest in going to church. And they started talking about all the petty squabbles they have seen in year after year after year in churches. And so they have dismissed it as irrelevant. The goal that God had for us was that we would be changed to be like Jesus. So that people would see Jesus in us, and it's not happening. What we're doing isn't really working, and people are walking away or just coming in and being fake. And that's incredibly sad, because the reality is we all have areas of brokenness in our lives that we don't need to put masks on. We need to be healed from. Because everyone has some area of their life that's damaged, where they're full of anxiety or loneliness or grief or resentment or addiction, guilt, shame, fear. We could put so many things up there. And we need to be changed. We don't need to hide. We need to be healed. That's what needs to be happening. The cool thing about it is if you actually learn about Jesus, you see that he is a God who transforms people. He didn't just say this is the goal, he can do it. He actually changes people. So you can see that in one of his followers, a guy named Peter, if you know the story of Peter. So Jesus comes and selects Peter, he's a fisherman, and he says, I want you to come follow me, and so I'll make you a fisherman. And so Peter begins to follow Jesus, and after 3 years of living with Jesus, Peter has made about that much progress. Nothing. Matter of fact, by the end of his time, when Jesus is about to be betrayed and arrested, he says to Peter, hey, bad news. I'm going to be arrested, and you're going to deny me 3 times before the rooster even crows. And if you know the story, that's exactly what happens. That's what Peter does. He's been with Jesus. He loves Jesus, and he's so afraid of the people who are like, hey, aren't you one of his followers? No, I've never met the guy. I don't know what you're talking about. He lies and covers it up because he's so full of fear. And yet by the end of Peter's life, Jesus has so completely transformed him. History tells us that Peter was executed. He was crucified. because he would not renounce his faith in Jesus. And he said, I am so unworthy to be crucified. Crucify me upside down, because I'm not worthy to be crucified the same way Jesus was. Holy cow. What a transformation of his life, from a guy who's so afraid that he denies Jesus 3 times to a guy who will not deny Jesus even if it means crucifixion. That's what our God is capable of doing. He is a life-changing God. He can transform us, heal those broken areas, set us back on the path that we need to be on. So the question is, how does he do it? How does he change people's lives? Because if we could learn to be more like Jesus, then we could see our lives changing, and we could have that kind of positive impact on the people around us. So we're in this series called The God-Filled Life. And we're finishing it up today, and I want to talk about this. The 3 things that people need in order for them to change or heal or grow. Would you grab your notes? There are going to be some things you're going to want to write down today. Grab your notes, grab a pen. Welcome to those of you who are watching online. I'm glad you tuned in. If you open up the comment section right below the video, these notes are there. You can download those, and there'll be some things you'll want to follow along with me as we go through this today. What I'm talking about today is going to have direct impact. The reason I'm so excited about this, if you're married and you want to know how to create the environment where your spouse can change, notice how I worded that. I did not say, if you want to know how to change your spouse. Okay? Can't be done. You can't change another human being. But if you want to create the environment where your spouse can change, then these are the 3 elements they'll need. If you're a parent and you want to create the environment where your kids can be healthier, then these are the 3 things they're going to need. If you are a friend and you have a friend who's really struggling and you want to be a positive impact, have a positive impact in your life, these are the 3 things they need. This is what Jesus did. Let me show you. First thing that everyone needs, we all need grace in order to be safe. This is number 1 for a reason. It's number 1 because nothing else that we're going to talk about today will happen if this isn't present in the relationship. This is where it all begins. We need grace in order for there to be safety. So in the book, Changes That Heal, Dr. Cloud talks about this woman that comes in one day. Actually, a father and his daughter come in to see him in his hospital. The dad wants the daughter admitted to the hospital. The dad is a missionary, lifelong missionary for him and his wife. The daughter is 22 years old. And so he brings her in to see him because he wants Dr. Cloud to admit his 22-year-old daughter. So he sits down and he asks, Dr. Cloud can see, he knows that she's depressed. He says, what's the problem? And instead of the 22-year-old daughter answering, the dad answers. And the dad says this, well, it's pretty obvious she's not living like she should. She's doing drugs, sleeping around. She's flunking out of college. She has no idea what she wants to do with her life. If she just read her Bible and went to church, she wouldn't be so depressed. But all she does is hang out with those bad friends of hers. So Dr. Cloud's listening to this is like, what do you think would happen if she did all the things that you tell her to do? And the dad responds and says, well, then she'd be happy like her mom and me. And the Lord would bless her. Dr. Cloud said, it was at that moment I realized I'm not going to make any progress with Ruth, a 22-year-old daughter, with dad in the room. So he asked the dad to leave. And the girl is so clearly, visibly depressed. He waits a moment and he says to Ruth, he said, I think if I had to live with your father, I'd take drugs too. Great opening sentence, right? And he went on to talk to her about her choices. She decided to actually enter into the program and get healthy. And the reason she needed to is because she was so damaged from a lifetime of being in a relationship with a dad who didn't understand grace at all. Some of you know exactly what that's like. You were raised in a home where it was all about the rules. And every slip-up was met with condemnation and judgment. You were constantly communicated that you weren't right as you are. It damaged you. And grace, the opposite of all of this, is this beautiful word. Matter of fact, I want you to keep one thought in your mind as we go through and talk about grace today. It's on your notes. It's the key. It's grace, really, if you want to boil it down, is I'm for you no matter what. By that definition, there's not a lot of grace in this world, is there? I'm for you no matter what. No matter what you do, no matter what you don't do, I'm for you no matter what. And the reality is the Bible tells us clearly that our God is a God of grace. That's why you see things like this in the Bible. What should we say about these wonderful things? If God is for us, who can ever be against us? And the point he's making, and he repeats in the book of Psalms, is God is for you. Did you know that? God is for you. Do you know what it means to say that he is a God of grace who is for you? I love this definition I found this week. Grace is unbroken, uninterrupted, unearned, accepting relationship. Look at those words. Unbroken and unbreakable. Uninterrupted and uninterruptible. Now that we struggle with as followers of Jesus, don't we? Because we really think we can interrupt this accepting relationship. We think we can do something so bad that the relationship will stop. And you don't understand grace. You can't interrupt it. You can't break it. You can't earn it. This is what our God offers every human being on earth. If only we could catch the truth of this. That this is what he's offering us. An accepting relationship. Where he loves us just as we are and says, I'm so happy to be with you. Every time you bow to pray and you enter into the presence of God when you pray, he's excited that you've come. It is unbroken, uninterrupted, unearned, accepting relationship. God is the model of this. This is what he offers all of us. But many of us weren't raised in homes or lived in environments where we had this in our personal relationships. Because in a human relationship, grace means this. You can be exactly who you are. You don't need to hide your thoughts and feelings. You don't need to perform. You don't need to do anything to be loved. Someone knows the real you and just loves you anyway. How many relationships of grace do you have in your life? People who just love you like that. And again, when Jesus was here on earth, he modeled what the grace of God the Father, the Son, modeled it for all of us. John 1:17 says this about Jesus. The law was given through Moses, but grace came through Jesus Christ. You want to know what grace is? You look at Jesus. You want to know what it's like to say that we have a God of grace? You look at Jesus, and you'll see that he is consistently for people. One of my favorite stories in the Bible, I teach about this regularly because there's so much spiritual truth in this story. So if when I would go to Sunday school or daily vacation Bible school as a kid, we would often hear the story of Zacchaeus. So Zacchaeus, Jesus is traveling through this town one day, and there's this guy up in the tree. His name is Zacchaeus. He just wanted to catch a glimpse of Jesus. Now, he had to be in a tree because he couldn't get close enough to Jesus. Now, there's a backstory. He was a tax collector. So, you know how much we don't like the IRS in America? Well, that's nothing compared to how much the Jews hated tax collectors. Because Israel had been conquered by the Romans. And the Romans wanted their taxes. So they would hire Jewish people to collect their taxes for them. He was one of the people they'd hired. Now, the way that he would make a living is if you owed him $50, if you owed the Romans $50, he would charge you $100 and he'd pocket the difference. So not only was he working for the hated enemy, the Romans, he was ripping off his own neighbors. He was despised. He was a corrupt thief. People hated him, but he was protected by the Romans. They were going to protect him. He was absolutely hated. So he climbs up in the tree just to catch a glimpse of Jesus. And of all the people in the town that day that Jesus could have gone out to lunch with, he walks up to the tree where Zacchaeus is and says, I'd like to have dinner with you. And it was a scandal. They're all like, what? Do you know who he is? He's a crook. He's a thief. He is a liar. He betrays his own people. And you want to have dinner with him? Yeah, because you know why? Jesus was for him, not against him. And that's what grace means. He was for him. One of the most important messages you learn about grace is this. Grace is unbroken, unearned, accepting relationship. Do you get it with Zacchaeus? Zacchaeus couldn't do a single thing to stop God's grace. And neither can you. Your mistakes don't cancel out God's grace. They never have. They never will. You can't break it. God is saying to you every day of your life, I'm for you. And I still have a great purpose for your life. Doesn't matter how far down the wrong path you've gone. It will never stop his grace. It is unbreakable, uninterruptible. This is what grace means. And you see it in Jesus. So how many relationships of grace do you have in your life today? That's where I want you to start thinking about this today. For those of you who are struggling and hurting, are you able to get help and support that's going to be there regardless of how you're doing? Help that you don't have to earn. Do you have relationships of grace? The very first thing people need if they're going to grow and heal and change is we need grace, because grace makes things safe. And this is where it all begins. Now, there's a problem with grace, though. Isn't that strange to say there's a problem with grace? There is a problem with grace. Grace alone won't change a human being. I have a relative who is married to an alcoholic and gives that person unbelievable, endless grace. But that person never changes. Grace alone doesn't change people. We need another piece to this. And this is what you see in Jesus. The second thing we need is this. We all need truth to grow. So grace is the first piece of this environment where people have the ability to change. There needs to be grace. This message that I am for you no matter what. I'm here for you. I love you. It is unbreakable, uninterrupted, unearned, accepting relationship. But then we need truth to grow. And there was a reason why I worded the first one the way I did. We need grace to be safe. We need grace to be safe. People, well, here. You ever see the movie A Few Good Men? Well, then you know this line. If you've seen the movie, you know, you can't handle the truth. And the reality is, you can't handle the truth without grace. If grace isn't present in a relationship, then they won't listen to the truth. And you may be completely right. You may be 100% spot on, but they can't handle the truth without the first one. If grace isn't the foundation of the relationship, and they know that you are for them, they will never listen to what you have to say to them. Grace comes first, truth comes second. And again, we see this modeled in Jesus. Jesus is the model of this. I showed you a verse earlier, just a moment ago, from John 1:17. I have to admit, I changed the Bible verse. Ooh, boy, I'm in trouble. So here's what I showed you. John 1:17, the law was given through Moses, grace came through Jesus Christ. That's not what the Bible actually says. This is what it actually says. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. Jesus was not just full of grace, he was full of truth as well. And it's that combination that allowed him to have such a positive, powerful impact on people's lives, to create the environment where people could change. Truth, obviously, is just what's real. Here's reality. This is what's real. And this is important in our lives. Everybody needs this because for two major reasons. On your notes, here they are. First, because we all have blind spots. All of us have blind spots. You are no exception. I am no exception. I'm 47 years old, and I continue to learn things about me that I'm not aware of. I know now that will be that way forever. To the day I die. Then I'll get into heaven, and God will show me all of them that I never even saw. I mean, that's the reality about all of us. We all have blind spots. We are all not self-aware. Here's the problem with that. Radical growth requires seeing yourself as you are, not as you imagine. You need the truth about you. You can't grow without it. You will stay stuck. You will be trapped in your pain. You will not heal. You will not move on without the truth about you. And none of us see ourselves accurately. We all need this contribution from an outside source. But here's the other problem with this. The other problem why we need the truth so much is we all, not only do we have blind spots, we don't see our own problems, we all believe lies. Every single one of us. We have things in our head, right? I promise you, at this moment in your life, you have things in your head that are wrong, that you believe to be true about God, about faith, about money, about relationships, You have things in your head right now that a few years from now you will not believe. But you believe them now. You believe them right now. And truth brings this reality and say, wait, this isn't what God is like. This is what he's like. You need to believe the truth. Get that lie out of your head. All of us have things like this. Here's the problem with this one, really. I mean, both of them. Because we believe things that are not true, we are damaging ourselves. We are missing out on the life God has for us. And we can't really make progress towards becoming like Jesus, so we become more loving and we become healthier and we become more self-controlled until we get those lies out of there and understand and accept the truth. We can't move on. We will remain stuck in that situation. So we have to have the truth. Matter of fact, Jesus actually put it this way. He said, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. That's what he said. There's freedom in the truth. Now, it should say, you'll know the truth, and by the way, most of the time when you discover the truth, it's going to really, really hurt. But then it's going to free you. Now, this means so much to me. Some of you know my story, know how I'm thinking when I see a verse like that. We all believe lies. I was raised in a very difficult environment when I was a child, and I internalized things as a child that were not true. Like all of us have. I began to believe that emotions were the enemy. And you should not express emotions, and you should suppress your emotions, and that's what I began to do. I began to believe lies about my humor, that if I could make people laugh, that was a good thing, and then my humor turned into this other twisted thing where it became a protection source for me. If you hurt me, I was going to hurt you with my humor so you didn't hurt me again. I began to believe and live out of these things that I wasn't even aware of. I had no idea. Come on in. I had no idea that these things were even in my head. But they were there, and they were affecting my entire life until 2 years ago, when through the grace and truth of people in my life, all of a sudden I became aware of them, and I began to move toward the truth. And the truth hurt like crazy. It really hurts. But then it leads to freedom. We need the truth in order to change and become the people that we were created to be. So here's my question for you on this one. How are you getting truth into your life? I'll tell you how you're not getting it. Every song you listen to on the radio. Okay? I'll tell you that. I'll tell you how else you're not getting it. Every show you watch on Netflix. I promise you. That's why one of the reasons why pretty much every year I do a message on movies is because you need to understand that what you're being shown isn't true. And if you believe it and follow that path, you will believe a lie and it will damage your life. That's one of the reasons why we do things like that. Because you need to be aware that what you're getting in your ears through the popular message of our music and our culture isn't telling you the truth. I mean, we should know that. Just look at the lives of the people who are singing it. How messed up they are. This isn't true. It's not going to work. It doesn't work in practical application. So you need a different place where you can get some input from the truth. Now, sometimes you get it from your good friends. Some of you have great friends who love you enough to tell you the truth in an environment of grace. Thank God for those people. Some of you need to go see a counselor where you can get grace and truth. Because you need to have the lies that you believe get out of here. Get exposed to the truth so you can be free. Some of you, this is why I talk all the time about if you have a phone, one of the best things you can do is go to the App Store and download a program called YouVersion, Y-O-U Version. And it's a free Bible app. And you can set it up so that it pops up different Bible reading programs. And during the day, you can have a Bible verse pop up in your phone, and you will be amazed how many times the verse is saying exactly what you need to hear. That's God. He does that. And you can get the truth in different ways. Because the reality is, these are the pieces that we need if we're going to become healthy and we're going to help people grow and change. People need grace, people need truth, and then they need one more thing. Oh, drag. This is why the Bible is so important, by the way. This verse, look at what it can do. It exposes our innermost thoughts and desires, and that's where the lies are. That's where the lies are. This is why it's so important that you read your Bible. Because this is something the Bible can do for you. All right, the third piece we all need is time. We all need time. This is how people change. Time is a thing that we want to skip, right? I mean, we are Americans. We are the most impatient society ever. We want microwaves that work faster because it's too slow to wait 30 seconds for something to warm up. We are so impatient. And as one author was saying, it's the ingredient that you can't leave out. This author said, it's the secret to yeast, it's the secret to a good marinade, it's the secret to a fine wine, it's the key to making a lasting and deep love relationship, to fighting an illness, to grieving the loss of a loved one, to maturing in your faith, to growing up. Time is essential to change. And Jesus taught this. There's this great story that Jesus taught, and it's confusing when you first read it in the Bible. Jesus said there was a man who owned a vineyard, and he had a fig tree. And the fig tree never produced anything. And so he said to his gardener one day, he said, cut it down. Just taking up space in the garden. And Jesus was telling the story to make a point. And then the gardener responds by saying, wait a second. He said, give it one more chance. Leave it another year. I'll give it special attention and plenty of fertilizer. And if we get figs next year, fine. If not, then you can cut it down. And he's talking here about people. And he's saying, he's telling us what we all need if we're going to grow, if we're going to become the people we need to be. The special attention in the original language has the idea of digging around the roots. Because there were things that were interfering with the tree bearing fruits. We had to get that out of the way. That's the truth piece, by the way. There are things that are interfering with you being more loving. There are things interfering with you being more self-controlled. We've got to dig those out. And the truth does that. And then you need fertilizer. We need grace. And then we need time. All three of them present in the story, Jesus said, and then you'll be productive, and then you'll bear fruit. These are the elements that we all need, and it won't happen overnight. Now here's, again, talk about one of the biggest problems in our society. This right here. One of the biggest problems in our society is we actually believe that. We believe that time will heal wounds. Have you discovered yet in life that time doesn't heal all wounds? Some of you were deeply wounded in your past, and you sit here today in terrible pain, and your wounds aren't getting better because time doesn't heal wounds. One of the things I thought was so important to learn in that book was this. There's good time. There are two kinds of time. There's good time. Good time is when you have these elements present in your life. You have lots of grace, and you have truth coming in, and time passes, now you're going to heal. That's good time. And then there's bad time. Bad time is what some of you are in right now. You were deeply hurt at some point in the past. You are not receiving the grace that you need. You are not receiving the truth that you need. So time is passing and you're not getting any better. Some of you actually feel like you're getting worse. Time heals nothing. It's good time that combines grace and truth that allows you to heal. So in December, I told this story earlier this year. I went to the doctor for my annual checkup in December, and the thing that they make you do now is they make you answer these 6 psychological questions about, how depressed you are, or if you're suicidal, things like that. A year before I'd been to the doctor, and I had to fill that out, and I was afraid they were going to admit me because all of my answers were up at the farthest right end of the scale. I literally was embarrassed about circling the answers, but I'm like, I can't lie to my doctor. But I wanted to lie to my doctor. I didn't want to tell the truth. And I hadn't thought about that for a year until I went back this last December for my checkup, and my answers were all the way at the other end of the scale. And I sat there looking and going, whoa, what a difference a year has made. But time didn't heal that wound. Time hasn't brought me the healing that it has. Good time has brought the healing. Be careful. I'm not saying good times. Okay? Not saying that. If you think the last year and a half have been good times, you don't know my story. That is not what's been happening. Good time. Because I have people who are for me no matter what. They give me unbroken, unearned, uninterrupted, accepting relationship. And I have people who love me enough to give me the truth. And that spiritual discipline I talked about reading my Bible, I do that constantly. And I have multiple inputs from the truth. And so good time has passed for me. Grace and truth have come into my life, and I am better and getting healthier because of good time passing. Now, I just want to emphasize again, everything I'm saying so far does not mean you can change a human being, okay? It does not mean it. You can offer someone grace, truth, and time and not change them. But it creates the environment where change can happen, where healing can happen. I'm telling you that because I want to move into a different part of this right now and just finish up with this. I've observed 3 problems with this whole topic since I've been learning about it. I want to talk about those problems. First problem, number 1, and admit you've all encountered this: truth without grace. All of you have been in relationships at some point in your life where you got lots of truth from the person and no grace. They weren't for you. They didn't love you. This wasn't about a relationship. It was about them telling you what they thought you should do or what they thought you should be. And when you were done, and many times, unfortunately, the reason I wrote this is because this is the church in America. You want to know why the average size of the church in America is 78 people? You want to know why 90% of churches are declining in attendance? And of the 10% that are growing, 9% are growing because they just take Christians from this church and shuttle them over there? You want to know why that's happening? This disgusting, horrific thing has taken over the church in America. It is truth from their perspective without grace. Go ahead and go into the average church and talk about a struggle. You will encounter truth without grace constantly. You will be attacked and condemned. You'll be given little pithy sayings. You'll be told you're failing in your faith. You're not reading your Bible enough. You will feel ashamed and lesser and anxious and condemned and judged. All these awful things that are characteristics. It's so awful because this is missing. And now, if I were to ask you this question, who has ever treated you this way? Who has given you truth without grace? You can pop names in your mind probably right now. Some of you were raised by a dad this way. Lots and lots of truth, no grace. Some of you is your mom. Some of you is a boyfriend or girlfriend or ex-spouse. This is what contributed to where you're at today. And that's the wrong question to ask. The right question is, are you doing this to anyone? Is there someone in your life today that you're giving a lot of truth to and very little grace? Some of you who are in a romantic relationship, you're married, if you were to ask their spouse, do you feel like I give you more grace or truth? You won't like the answer. They feel nitpicked and condemned and criticized and judged. And they would say, yeah, I get a lot of truth, but not a lot of grace. Some of you, if you're a parent and you were to talk to your kids and say, which one of these did you get more of from me? They're going to tell you they got a lot of the truth and not enough of the grace. Some of you, your friends, if they were honest with you, would say, this is what the relationship is like with you. A lot of truth, but not a lot of grace. The environment where people heal requires grace first. As a matter of fact, if we were to put it in a chart, it would be grace, truth. That's the environment where people change. Huge amounts of grace. The grace of God, uninterrupted, unbroken, unearnable, accepting relationship. And truth. Second problem, grace without truth. This is where you see their blind spots, you say nothing. You're just not going to even bring it up. You are enabling, by the way, their destructive behavior. And fear is usually the driver of this one. Because here's what it is again. I bet if you think about it, there are people you really love and care about right now who are on a path that is hurting them, and you haven't said anything. You haven't even risked the conversation. You're doing the grace thing. You're for them. And you won't leave them. but they don't grow without the grace and the truth. Now, some of you are like, okay, great, I know somebody, but what do I say? Well, we did a message. If you go on YouTube and type in my name, Brian Rudesill, you can go back, and we did 2 messages last fall on how to speak in conflict situations, how to handle it well. Go back and watch those. You can learn it. It's a skill you can learn. You can learn how to bring truth to somebody in a way that isn't destructive. People don't grow without it. The third problem is truth without time. You ever have somebody who treated you this way? Change and change now. These are people who give you ultimatums. You ever have an ultimatum? I've had ultimatums. Controlling behavior. Ever have someone impatient with your flaws? Yeah, and again, the real question is, do you do this with the people in your life? That's the real question. Are you unwilling to offer time to people? Because people don't grow without it. It's grace, truth, and time that results in transformation. And this is where I wish I could tell you this beautiful story of how I saw this in the church, and there are certainly examples of it, but it's far easier to find examples of grace, truth, and time in recovery programs because they get it. The most successful recovery programs understand this. So there's a guy named Jake who is a recovering alcoholic. He put it this way. He said, when I was in the church or with my Christian friends, they would just tell me that drinking was wrong and I should just repent. They didn't know how many times I had tried quitting, how many times I had tried to be a good Christian. He said, then I went to AA, and I found I could be honest about my failures, but more important, I could be honest about my feelings of being helpless. He said, when I found out that God and others accepted me, that's grace, in both my drinking and my helplessness to control it, that's when I began to have hope. I could come forward with who I really was, and I would find help. As much as the church preached grace, I never really found acceptance there for my real condition. They always expected me to change. But in AA, not only did they not expect me to change, they told me that by myself, I couldn't change. That all I could do was confess who I was, and that God would change me along with their daily support. He said, finally I could be honest. Finally I could find real friends. He said, changed my whole life. I wish the church was more like recovery groups. I wish the church was more like recovery groups. Because this is what's changing people's lives today. So here's what I want to ask you as we finish up today. Which one of those 3 elements do you struggle with the most? Grace, truth, or time? Because my theory is all of us have one that is our weakness. Some of you know it's the grace thing. People's flaws and shortcomings annoy you. You are critical and harsh and constantly bringing up their failures, and you know this is the thing. People don't grow without grace. For some of you, it's the truth piece. You know that you love people in your life, and you are too scared to tell them the truth. And they won't change. They can't heal. They can't grow without it. You are contributing to the pain in their life. Remember one time, I had this friend who loved me enough to tell me the truth about something that was really like, wow. And I went to this other person who knew me really well, and I said, did you ever see this in me? And the person said, yep. And I said, why didn't you ever say something? Were you ever going to? They said to me, I would never have said anything. I was so stunned by that. Do you know how much pain I was in and how much pain other people were in because nobody told me the truth? We don't grow, we don't heal without it. This is what we need. And for some of you, this is it. For some of you, it's the timepiece. You know you are too impatient. You've told them the truth, and now you're just expecting them to change, and you're impatient with them. The environment where people grow and change is the combination of all of these. It's perfectly modeled by God. And oh, by the way, whichever one you struggle with, grace or truth, especially grace or truth, here's my next question for those of you who say you follow Jesus. For those of you who struggle to give grace to others, think about how you view God. Because I'm betting for those of you who struggle to give grace to others, you struggle to view God as a God of grace. Some of you have an image of God as a God who is quick to anger, who's angry with you, who's upset with the choices you've made, who's disappointed in you right now. My experience is when you struggle to show grace to others, it's because you have the incorrect concept of God. You do not see him as a God who's saying, hey, do you want unbroken, uninterrupted, unearned, accepting relationship from me? You're like, that can't be true. That's too good to be true. By the way, yes it is. That's what grace means. Grace is too good to be true. Now, normally in the world, if something's too good to be true, be suspicious of it, but not with God. If it's too good to be true, we're probably getting close to the truth. It's too good to be true. And yet it's exactly what it's offering. Some of you struggle with the truth, and maybe typically if you struggle to share the truth with others, one of the things that's consistent is you may be struggling to be truthful with God. The Bible talks about confession being a very important part of our spiritual disciplines. When was the last time you confessed anything to God? When was the last time you said to God, you know what, this was wrong and I'm sorry? Unless you're perfect, then no big deal. I am so far from perfect. You may be struggling with this aspect of God. And again, if I haven't said it enough, let me say it again. You cannot change it. You can do these three things to any human being for the rest of their life and you won't change them. You will just create the environment where change is possible. Is that clear? You are not responsible for changing people. But you are responsible to create the environment where change can happen. Let me have you bow your heads as we finish today. This beautiful God of grace is more in love with you than you have ever imagined. He wants a relationship with you so badly. And some of you know nothing about a relationship with God. You know about religion. If I were to ask you to define religion, you could. You know about rules. You know about feeling guilty with this God. But you don't know grace. His grace is so amazing. He wants you in a relationship so bad that 2,000 years ago, he sent his only son into the world to bleed and die on a cross for us because our God is rich in grace, the Bible says. So that you and I could be completely forgiven and we can be in his family forever. Not temporarily, not till we blow it really bad. The word in the Bible is always forever. And if you want that relationship with God, you can have it. You can enter into a relationship with grace with him. Just say something like this in your heart to him. Say, Jesus, I'm turning to you today. I don't want religion. I don't want rules. I want you. I want a real relationship with you. So please, forgive me for what I've done. Please come make your home inside of me. I want to be part of your family today. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, thanks so much for coming. On the way out, make sure you grab some snacks and coffee. And if you want to sign up on any of the volunteer things, they're on the back table back there.